Well, hello there. Thanks for joining me today. Today I've got a fun and exciting topic, murder weapons. We are being murdered in so many different ways. But let's put a little bit of logic to this because consumers have a lot of expectations, right? They expect that the government is keeping us safe. And because of that, there's a lot of assumptions over time. For example, if I was selling you something, there would be an expectation that I had tested it and what I was selling was safe. And if not, there were guardrails in place to protect the consumers from me, right? That's how it should work, correct? Some agency you could report this person to selling you these lousy goods. Well, what if the government and the agencies are all combined selling us these lousy goods? So let's pull up a chair and take a look here. But yet, if a company is selling something, claiming it's safe, yet they don't study it, and they refuse all reasonable requests to figure out if it is safe or not, and you get blocked over and over again for asking these questions and called crazy, does it make it safe because people they shut down? Because they refuse to do studies and they've identified some of us as being crazy and our questions should not be answered? We're only asking questions about where are the studies? What is crazy about that? So before you turn on another person who is here trying to relay information, perhaps we should tone down our approach toward each other. Frankly, it's an old, tired trick they play. They play it on us. They lock us up. They call us crazy. But society also joins them in that madness. So I would suggest that maybe, just maybe, in my final time here on the game board, maybe we knock off this crap about calling those of us who want to convey information crazy, okay? I am far from crazy. What is going on is absolutely insane. But what is going on has nothing to do with whether you believe that I am crazy or not. What does me being crazy have to do with the government not doing studies? That is how they've trained people to divert away from people like myself. Your head automatically clicks in and says, crazy time, crazy time. And so then your first instinct is this person is crazy. I'm going to shut this down. And you're doing that with full support of your government. They are encouraging you to call people like myself crazy. And that way, when they do extraordinary things like they're doing to me right now by putting so much electricity into my home, I will eventually drop over with a heart attack. That is not the ramblings of a crazy person. That is the ramblings of a person who is right now being attacked with a very intense murder weapon that we all seem to be thinking is okay. If it wasn't dangerous for me, why would they install all these extra transformers around my house? Why are they trying to kill me is another issue, but I want to explain to you that what they're doing to me is being done to you also, just not at the same degree. Even small amounts of electricity and this radiation in our homes impacts us greatly to the point that those that are the most vulnerable are getting hit the hardest. Anxiety issues, all kinds of issues that people are not seeing coming. That is what makes this such an evil, silent killer, is that people can't put their fingers on it. You don't see that radiation in the air, right? And you don't connect that radiation in the air when you start throwing up or getting sick and having other things happen because you cannot see it. And everybody is assuming that this is all safe stuff. Then if you go and try to talk to somebody and you say, hey, I'm concerned about the electricity, they'll go, what are you, crazy? We all need electricity. Well, no, we didn't. You need to understand we came from a very advanced society. They knew that electricity would harm the rest of us. Who developed electricity? Okay, that answers one question, right? Why'd they come up with electricity? Because this is an experiment, and electricity is, in fact, a eugenics plot. And I challenge you again, if it was so safe, why are they not doing any studies? And I will tell you exactly what is known as of this date. This is not my first time going around this rodeo talking about electricity. So if they're claiming it's safe, where's the backup, right? Where is the backup? So first of all, what is a murder weapon? Murder weapon is a great slang phrase to use when talking about deadly objects. For example, I love how this knife feels in my hand. It's the perfect murder weapon. The best thing about using a gun as your murder weapon is that you don't have to get close to your victim. I heard he strangled her with a wire. What a creative murder weapon. So I'm going to be talking about a few examples of what they have been using on us currently. So if you're not in tune with why electricity would impact our bodies, I have all the data you need over on my website. Our bodies are, in fact, fine-tuned electrical instruments, and I'll have more on that in a minute here. But what are they using against us that has to do with electricity? Well, electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, known as electric shock therapy. It is a procedure where electricity is passed through the brain in order to cause a seizure. I came a millisecond from a seizure from the electricity and the radiation in my home. I've already talked about this, but I'm just saying, just listen to what I'm saying. And this is from electricity, right? They put probes on your head in order to cause a seizure. It is a treatment utilized in psychiatry to assist in changing the chemistry of the brain in order to reduce or reverse symptoms of some mental illnesses. Though ECT is widely considered safe and effective by patients and physicians today, it has a very disturbing past. U.S. mental institutions in the 1900s were using, they considered it non-lethal treatments like electroshock therapy with the aim of putting their patients back into the public. You need to understand that electroshock or electroconvulsive therapy is the use of electrical currents on the brain to make convulsive seizures occur. It is used for patients that they claim are not responding to psychotherapy and or medication. It is mainly used for patients with severe depression. They claim the therapy is a procedure but not invasive. It includes small electric currents being put into the brain. For some, they do it once. For many, they do it over and over. Opponents of electroshock therapy argue that it causes severe side effects and can be harmful to patients. Full disclosure, when I was taken off the medication, I was diagnosed with what they called at the time a chemical imbalance and put on massive amounts of medication over a term of around 14, 15 years. During that time, I also spent 2 nights in a psychiatric ward in this country. The struggle to get off of the pills was immense. And at the end, they wanted to convince me to take electroshock therapy. That was and this was just a few years ago. They pitched me really hard and said, listen, this stuff isn't like what people think that it was. Okay, so what's happening now, and I'll explain more, but this whole thing got set up by a big lie. Okay, I never had a chemical imbalance. And the reason I'll be going into more detail today than I normally would about this ECT is they are reviving it. They're starting to use it on the veterans. They're bringing it back again. That's how it works. They've been using it on us since the 1900s, so don't kid yourself. It's coming back. They say in rare cases, wait a minute here. Okay, so some of the common side effects include confusion, memory loss, headaches, and muscle pain. ECT can cause more serious side effects, such as heart problems or even death. Yes, our bodies really cannot take being completely zapped by electricity. There are ethical concerns surrounding electroshock therapy, particularly when it comes to informed consent. Critics argue that patients are often not fully informed of the risks and potential side effects of ECT before they receive the treatment. They also point out that ECT is sometimes used as a form of coercion or punishment in psychiatric hospitals. While proponents argue that it is a highly effective treatment for severe mental illness, opponents raise concerns about its side effects and the ethics of using a treatment. Ultimately, the decision to undergo electroshock therapy should be made by the patient in consultation, but that's where it gets tricky, right? Because remember, they're never gonna tell you all the risks. Maybe they might. I never had anybody in the years that they had me on all this explain a single risk, okay? And any risk that anybody brought up got downplayed. Well, it's okay that you've gained 50 pounds because don't you feel better mentally? See, that's how they work. Okay, so now for the history. This guy, Ugo Cerletti, is the father of electroshock therapy. The idea of how the mind works and illnesses and disease were introduced to him when he started working under this psychiatric professor on a famous study of dementia in 1929 in Rome. So in 1931, he went on to this other thing and they started using it on animals and stuff. No reason to get too graphic here, okay? So they did their first patient April the 11th, 1938. A patient named Enrico X was admitted to the clinic. So he became the first person to ever receive electroshock therapy. The electrodes were attached to his temples with a rubber band. They introduced the treatment with 80 volts of electricity at a slow increase. He did not have convulsions. He started singing out loud and was not able to respond to questions. And his team attempted it once more on Enrico after treating a female patient, this time giving 92 volts of electricity all at once for less than a second. At that voltage, you would think it would have mutilated his brain, but after about an hour, Enrico was able to move his limbs, speak, do simple instructions, and walk back to the ward. They claim the therapy was a success. But they also lied about the report, okay, because they don't know basically what they're doing, right? The procedure itself includes a seizure in the patient's brain through the use of typically electric currents. When a patient is under anesthesia, the shock causes convulsions in the brain, which are supposed to help alleviate symptoms of mental illness. Memory loss. One of the most common side effects of electroshock therapy is memory loss. And keep in mind, electroshock therapy is not the same as being in a house with high electricity, but we have to consider that high volumes of electrical directly to your brain will throw you into a seizure. The volume that I'm getting in my home right now, which is extraordinarily high, literally has my body in full vibration mode, okay? So one of the most common side effects is memory loss. Yeah, that would be effective, right? If you get a crazy person to accept electroshock treatment, they may never be a problem again, right? Because they typically make you lose your memory. Patients may experience gaps in their memory both before and after the procedure. While some memories may eventually return, others may be lost forever. Physical injury. electroshock therapy can also cause physical injury to the patient. In some cases, patients may experience broken bones or other injuries as a result of the convulsions introduced by the shock. Controversy. The use of electroshock therapy is highly controversial, with many medical professionals and mental health advocates arguing that it is a barbaric and outdated practice. Some even go so far as to compare it to torture, citing the physical and emotional trauma that patients can experience as a result of the procedure. Effectiveness. While some patients do report feeling relief from their symptoms from undergoing electroshock therapy, others do not experience any improvement at all. In fact, some studies have shown that ECT is no more effective than placebo treatments for certain mental illnesses. Lack of standardization. ECT is not standardized across different clinics and hospitals, which has led to inconsistencies in its use and effectiveness. The lack of standardization has made it difficult for psychiatrists to determine when ECT is appropriate and how it should be administered. Gee, isn't that amazing? Not really any standardization, not really any tests, but yet they want to hook us up and have us undergo this procedure. Okay, I'm getting the picture now. Despite these concerns, some psychiatrists, and I had it recommended to me, it wasn't more than 7 or 8 years ago. Despite these concerns, some psychiatrists still can advocate for the use of ECT. For example, it may be considered for patients with severe depression who have not responded to other treatments. And now they're doing studies. I started looking to see if there were, in fact, any new studies. Well, it looks to me, and I'm just guessing here. So if anybody is suggesting that you undergo ECT, I highly suggest you do your own research. I'm not going to be going through the entire world of what they're up to, but this is my suspicion. What they're pitching now is ketamine for depression, right? So what they're saying is that they just happen. Now, I don't know if this is true or not. Remember, I'm pretty tired of all of this criminal activity. So my view might be a little bit slanted here because it was also tried on me, full disclosure. So anyway, because I started seeing all these ketamine things, okay? Every single study directly reports that ECT works better than ketamine. See what they're saying is, hey, this works better. So let's get you off that ketamine. And we have this old thing that used to work really well called ECT. But people are still skeptical of ECT, perhaps because of stigma. Or negative depictions in films such as One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and shows such as Stranger Things. We need to improve public awareness of ECT for treatment-resistant depression, they said. So, a study, I did find one study, and what they said was it did not decrease the risk of death by suicide. They always use the risk of suicide. Like they say, if you don't let your kid whack off their penis or cut off their breast, they're going to kill themselves. Or they say things like, well, if you don't go along with me, I'm going to kill your parents. Your whole family's going to die if you don't let me rape you. They always use the exact same death threat, right? Well, that's why it's important that nobody knows that this isn't our only life, right? Because if you think this is our only life, you're going to behave much differently, right? When that doctor starts handing you some advice. So just be aware that is highly likely the reason why they push this idea that this is our only life, because it impacts greatly these kinds of decisions. So they did this study in the Journal of Clinical Psychiatry, and it said that It does not decrease the risk of death. So these little studies are starting to come out, okay? And what they said was this: shock therapy is often recommended after antidepressants have failed. Both treatments have been misleadingly marketed as correcting chemicals or chemical messages in the brain that cause depression. This was around the mid 1990s when they got me. They were telling all of us, hey, you got a chemical imbalance. And then after a while, they said, well, we think you're bipolar. Yeah. And it all started with this idea that we have chemical imbalances. So, and I also think a memo went out to doctors and therapists about that time. That was about that time, the early 90s, when we all started getting just casually handed antidepressants. Anyways, let me continue on here. So they used misleading marketing as correcting chemicals or correcting messages in the brain causes depression. This myth was debunked by researchers from the University College of London, who reviewed 17 major studies published over several decades and found no convincing evidence to support the theory that a chemical imbalance causes mental disorder. The fact that these treatments do not prevent suicide and is yet another reason why they should never be forced on patients. I never felt more like suicide than after they put me on these pills. And if you pay attention to their literature, the first part is all fun and happy, right? Then at the bottom it says, well, you could die any minute now because of suicide, because of horrible feelings, and you may wipe out your entire family, and we're here to help you. Yeah, that's how it works. Okay, so let me start over. The fact that these treatments do not prevent suicide is yet another reason why they should never be forced on patients, a practice that the United Nations Committee on Torture has equated to torture. Consumers should never be told that ECT or antidepressants are life-saving, as it can also dissuade them from seeking safer, workable solutions. The chemical imbalance marketing scam fueled antidepressant sales. Research then showed SSRI antidepressants aren't effective for at least 29 to 46% of those taking them. The psychiatry pharmaceutical industry invented theory and marketing scam seems to have been expanded in the use of ECT, and that could put people at risk of receiving a treatment that could prove fatal. In the Journal of Clinical Psychiatry study published April 2022, they said that early studies of the impact of ECT on suicide deaths were conducted in an era during which effective psychotropic medications was limited or inaccessible to most patients. Therefore, they are difficult to extrapolate to contemporary cohorts of patients, and as such, currently effective drugs. And then what they do is now what they're pitching is they're saying, well, the newer antidepressants are better. This is the patterns they use, okay? But the newer psychotropic drugs have now been discredited as being more effective than older ones. So no one is agreeing that these new ones are better than the older ones, right? In an interview with WebMD, a psychiatrist stated, the bottom line is that we really don't have any good evidence that these drugs work. In a 2018 study published in BJ Psych Bulletin, this doctor further stated, patients should be informed that there is no evidence that antidepressants work by correcting a chemical imbalance, that antidepressants have mind-altering effects, and that evidence suggests they produce no noticeable benefit compared with placebo. A 2016 study revealed that antidepressants double the risk of harm related to suicide and violence in healthy adults. This means that according to the analysis, one person is harmed for every 16 persons treated with the drugs. The study authors considered it likely that antidepressants increase suicides in all ages. According to research published in 2019 in the journal Psychotherapy and Psychomatics, adults who start treatment with antidepressants for depression are 2.5 times more likely to attempt suicide compared to placebo. The study found that approximately 1 in every 200 persons who start treatment will attempt suicide due to the pharmaceutical effects of the drug. The Food and Drug Administration has issued a black box warning of suicidal effects in those taking antidepressants up to the age of 24. But the research shows that the risk is possible for all age groups. So, they've done a lot of studies on this stuff, haven't they? Well, they haven't done any studies, but there have been some people who have come out with better conclusions, right? For example, if you look at my website on my smart meter page, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, some wonderful person has been attempting to gather up any known studies that have to do with cell phone usage. That is the one area that I've been finding a lot of studies done in, cell phones. So if you're really thinking it's a good idea to have those kiddos or grandma on that cell phone, I suggest you hop on over there and scroll down to the bottom. And I published every known study that I could find at the bottom there that somebody had put together. So there is a lot of information out there about cell phones. It's not about the rest of this stuff. And that's because individual researchers have been able to dig into these cell phone stuff. So let me see here. So anyway, so they say the researchers established that there is no evidence that an ECT course to decrease the risk of death by suicide. Yeah. So assertions by psychiatric organizations such as the American Psychiatric Association, they say that ECT and antidepressants are life-saving treatment, and they correct unbalanced chemicals or chemical messages in the brain. Is so misleading that it could constitute consumer fraud. So what they're also doing too, I looked up they're doing some veterans. They've spent $70 million on electroshock treatments on veterans between 2010 and 2019. During the same period, there was a 46% increase in the number of veterans that were given ECT. So it's coming, folks, it's coming, because this is the warning signal, right? Because why between 2010 and 2019 were they spending $70 million on electroshock treatments on veterans? Well, because they're now trying to flip the switch around and say, oh, those old antidepressants, you heard about all those. Oh, well, those things didn't really work. But look, we have some new ones over here. Look over here. Don't look over there. That's the whole strategy, right? In fact, FDA hasn't a clue how many Americans are electroshocked without their consent, in violation of the UN Convention Against Torture, which the U.S. has ratified in domestic law. Nor does it know how many individuals ECT has failed to prevent from killing themselves or directly influence their decision to commit suicide. However, FDA was quick to approve another shock device for the American market. Okay, give me a second here. I flew past too quickly. Um, in 2021, MECTA, the manufacturer of the Spectrum shock device, filed for bankruptcy after a spate of lawsuits against it led to its losing its product liability insurance. And on December 1st that year, it discontinued manufacturing. Gee, wouldn't it be wonderful if people start going out for these people? Huh. I wonder how this would work. I wonder if people would actually rise up to help other people. Huh. Maybe some people who had some experience filing lawsuits. Huh. Wonder who those people might be. Maybe people that want to show some solidarity. Or maybe if you're one of those people that can help the rest of us, you may have realized that they've also gotten you, right? And because they've gotten you, maybe you can come and help the rest of us. See how it works? They're getting all of us. Who is going to stand up with me? Who is going to stand? Everybody buckle and keep letting this stuff go on? Okay. I'm not even going to get into the increase in sales of pharmaceuticals for antidepressants and all of these issues. I'm not going to even discuss what happens when people suddenly stop taking these pills because I stopped taking them a few times. You go fucking insane, okay? All bets are off as far as what you might do. They are very dangerous. So what's the plan down the road here? This country has about everybody on antidepressants, and the count is getting higher and higher and higher. You realize those antidepressants are coming from China, right? You realize that with one lack of a shipment, a lot of people could get cut off from all these danger medications, right? You get this memo, right? They're going to be unleashing a bunch of people who will become insane due to no responsibility on their own in the near future. You get all these people on these pills, then you cut them off, and now you've developed a bigger culture of insane people in this country. How long does the United States want to proudly stand by with people living in tents and the amount of insane people we have in this country? It's because it's the big experiment. But my question to the rest of you lab rats, and I mean you, the listeners, we're all lab rats, right? All of us are. Just because me, the lab rat that has the microphone, is speaking, and I have been horrendously impacted by the radiation and the stuff in my home, you other rablats don't think it's going to happen to you next? I would perk up those lab rat ears because we're all lab rats. So as lab rats, are we going to join together? And I will say no more. Okay, so yes, lawsuits work. This MECTA, they got shaken out of business, okay? The lawsuits were going through the courts in 2018 to 19, and on October 2019, 10 months after the FDA's controversial and contested final rule on ECT devices, the FDA received a pre-market application that MECTA for a new ECT device called Sigma, pronounced Sigma, which was quickly approved as a Class 2 device on April 20th. So I'm not really clear about this, but this company, Mecta, who I just read, they had this thing, they went bankrupt. Okay, all these lawsuits, 2018, 2019, got that part. Then Mecta said that I get it. Okay. How predicted is this? Okay. Mecta said that the Sigma is different from the Spectrum and is the most advanced ECT device ever produced. It is astonishing how quickly the company could develop an innovative new device, but never had the finances to conduct clinical trials to prove that the Spectrum device worked. And now, supposedly, the Sigma device is safe and effective. And I'll keep reading here. Meanwhile, the tragic expectation is that more patients will commit suicide after receiving electroshock. Psychiatrists and the FDA will blame this on their illness rather than failed treatments and the death roll will rise. As a recap, antidepressants do not prevent suicide. When they don't work, then electroshock is recommended, but this too doesn't prevent suicide. Neither are life-saving. ECT causes irreversible damage, including long-term memory loss and brain damage. In fact, electroshock and antidepressants carry the risk of driving people to commit suicide. Patients sold on the fraudulent idea that the treatments correct a chemical imbalance or faulty chemical messengers in the brain become hopeless when those treatments fail them and go on to make fatal decisions about their lives. As a matter of fact, the impact of the entire family, when they diagnose a child in the family, and I wasn't a child when this happened, I was in my early 40s, okay? But they did it in such a creepy and sinister way. What happened was I got blindsided, and I was wrangling with the issue of, do I sue Intel or not? I was not a depressed, out of control person. I was having a downturn in my life and I needed some clarity. That was the only reason why I went to therapy. Next thing I know, I'm being introduced to mind-bending drugs, right? See how it all works? So how this guy, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I got to keep moving here, but how this therapist snuck in the deal, somehow, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but he arranged a meeting with me when my mother was there visiting from Arizona. During that meeting, he sprung this idea of medication and told me and my mother that I would need medication for the rest of my life because I was crazy, right? Well, my mother just about had a breakdown. I can't see anymore, okay? And that impacted our entire lives, okay? The reason I have a roof over my head because my mother was so worried when she was toward the end of her life. She was so worried that what was going to happen to me without her being here to help me. She made sure I had a roof over my head. I can't wait to see my mom because she spent all those years so worried. And yeah, yeah, they almost got me big time, and they're trying to get me again. Is anybody going to help me? Is anybody going to help me? I'm going to put this on hold for a minute and get it together. But it was because of my mom. They about drove her insane. It was just horrible. After that meeting with that psychiatrist therapist, my mom about hit the roof because just the idea of her youngest child being crazy and having to be put on medication the rest of her life just snapped her brain. Literally, there was a period that it literally kind of snapped her brain because of it. It snapped my brain. It triggered us all into this horrible, horrible event that did not have to happen. I was only trying to get help. I was not looking for pills. I was not looking for anything but how to get myself past, do I decide to sue or not? I wasn't going in there, oh, I broke up, my life is terrible, divorce, 10 kids. That wasn't any issue. And I walked out taking pills and having my whole family think that I'm crazy. And that legacy lives on. That never leaves you. People will always, for the rest of your life, view you as crazy. And that is the plan, not the bug in the system. I'll be back in a minute. It's just another form of disrupting our families. That is exactly what it is. And not to even mention the cost of all those drugs. This was back in 1994. I was struggling to try to decide what to do. And then all of a sudden, they had me on so many pills right out of the bat that per month, my psychiatrist was, and the pills were like $500 a month. I wasn't working. I was trying to decide if I was going to sue Intel. They throw you into, if you think you're into turmoil, well, then start taking some pills. Then you really understand what turmoil is all about. So anyway, let me get back on track here. I only have so long that I can functionally keep talking, so I need to get myself back in focus here. Okay, so in fact, electroshock and antidepressants carry the risk of driving people to commit suicide. There needs to be accountability for false claims made in defense of these treatments. Better still, take them off the market when their risks are so high. Consumer fraud litigation should ensue in addition to any personal injury claims. Vulnerable patients seeking mental health care deserve much, much better. Non-harmful practice should be made available to them. And keep in mind, they have all of us on meds. They have all of us living under anxiety. They have all of us living with all this electricity, right? So what's next? Well, taser guns, another form of electricity they use to shock us. Taser guns are electroshock weapons that temporarily incapacitate the neuromuscular transmission, disrupting voluntary muscle control. Tasers are used worldwide. I gotta bring my breathing down a minute here. Some consider them as firearms, safe police or self-defense weapons, while others as harmful killers. TASER is the registered trademark of manufacturer TASER International and is actually an acronym that stands for Thomas A. Swift's Electric Rifle. Despite being touted as a less lethal solution to public order issues than firearms by numerous policing organizations, a Reuters investigation into the U.S. documented over 1,000 cases between the years 2000 and 2018 where people died after being tasered. Electroshock was formally cited as a cause of or factor in death in over 150 of these cases. And that's just the deaths. Organizations from the American Psychological Association to Arizona State University have confirmed the cognitive damage tasers can have, especially in the short term, raising questions about the morality of reading someone their rights after they've been tasered. Then there are the head injuries caused by falls after being tasered. Surprisingly, electrocuting someone is not without its risks. A 2019 Amnesty International report, for example, noted there have been 18 deaths linked to tasers since they were introduced to the UK police in 2003. Good morning, London. Beyond the physical effects of the taser itself, an experiment with the City of London found that officers carrying tasers led to greater hostility in public officer interactions. As usual, people of color suffer disproportionately when it comes to such incidents. Black people are 3 times more likely than their white counterparts to be the victims of tasering. The growing use by local police departments on the supposedly non-lethal taser electroshock weapon has caused the deaths of nearly 200 citizens in the United States and Canada alone. So this was according to, I imagine the number is probably way higher, right? Because these things aren't exactly being studied. So don't take everything I'm saying as like, oh yeah, okay. Because somebody might think, well, gee, there's only 200 people killed. That's not bad. I think if only one person is killed, that's bad. But what I'm trying to say is that likely these numbers are too low. So in 1997, Robin Cook, the Foreign Secretary of the UK, said the British government considered all such electroshock weapons, including the taser stun gun, commonly used by police in the United States, to be equipment primarily designed for torture. And this guy tried to make a ban back in 1997. Well, I don't think it worked out because it didn't work. And they said, we are committed to preventing British companies from manufacturing, selling, or producing equipment designed primarily to torture and to press for a global ban, this person said in 1997. Well, it was a good effort, right? Let me see here. So TASER is an acronym for Thomas A. Swift's electric rifle. Thomas Swift being a science fiction character from literature for boys. The actual TASER weapon was designed in 1969 by Arizona inventor Jack Cober and is produced today in a variety of models by TASER International of Scottsdale, Arizona. Some 70,000 police departments in the U.S. and Canada currently use TASER guns. The TASER gun can be used in two ways. It can either be fired from a short distance at an individual, or it can be used as a stun gun that is placed directly on the individual before releasing its charge of 5,000 volts and higher. And I don't remember, I did talk about stun guns a long time ago, and and now you have to fact check me on this, okay? But I believe this whole thing with the electroshock, it all started very early on when they learned how to use stun guns on cows. That's how I think it happened. But I do need to keep moving along here. So anyway, so one way is to, of course, come up really close and stun us, right? The capacity to inflict repeated and extended shocks at the push of a trigger makes the taser open to abuse in both dart and stun gun mode, critics say. In some cases, individuals have been shot with taser darts, then threatened or stunned with repeated jolts during transport or custody. What is it like to be incapacitated by a taser weapon? When fired, the taser propels two barbed darts with trailing wires that attach to the skin or clothing. Upon impact, a 50,000 volt electric shock is discharged into the victim for a period of 5 seconds. Whilst the barbs remain attached, this discharge can be repeated multiple times by pulling the trigger again and again, researchers noted in the report. Extreme pain. The immediate effects are debilitating. The current causes involuntary muscle contraction and extreme pain. The victim completely loses control over the body and falls to the floor until the current stops. The whole experience is both painful and degrading. Now, if our bodies weren't electrical machines, this stuff would not work, right? Just think about that. Amnesty International, the leading anti-torture watchdog organization, has long called on U.S., state, federal, and local authorities to suspend all transfers and use of tasers and other electroshock weapons pending a rigorous independent inquiry into their use and effects. Amnesty International considers the use of tasers to constitute cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment and torture. Amnesty International has reported that taser devices are frequently used to torture and interrogate people such as political prisoners, and that tasers are used by police in the United States, particularly for torture to gain compliance. But law enforcement agencies in the U.S., however, have not heeded Amnesty International's call to suspend the use of tasers. Today, some 7,000 of them use them. Out of a total of 18,000, they use tasers as part of their arsenal. Amnesty International recently reiterated its concerns about the use of taser stun guns on individuals who have already been handcuffed or placed in mechanical restraints. The use of taser in conjunction with restraints has been a common factor in many of the deaths. Imagine that. You restrain a person, you tie them down, you have them pinned to the ground, and then you taser them a bunch of times and they die. Gee, I wonder how that happens. Amnesty International considers the inflicting excruciating pain on a suspect who is restrained and not able to pose a serious threat to their own life or that of police officers or members of the public constitutes an excessive use of force, sometimes amounting to torture or other cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment. Imagine that. Here in the United States, they are using something that somebody is actually calling cruel, inhumane, or degrading. I can't imagine that. Can you? A 2004 study by the Denver Post found that in one county, 1/3 of the 112 people shot with a taser had been handcuffed at the same time. Well, this sounds to me, beyond the cruelty, this is sadomasochism, right? This is also somebody bent on domination and perversion and control. A medical expert has informed the American Free Press that taser energy can cause heart attacks, blood clots, and long-term damage to vital organs. I wonder how that works. You mean heart attacks from electricity? Can't imagine that. In such instances, the force used by the police officers violated international standards prohibiting cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment, as well as international guidelines on police use of force. Imagine that. I am just sitting here. I am stunned, like they hit me with a stun gun myself, that the U.S. is actually evading U.S. and amnesty laws. It's just shocking to me. Just shocking. So let me pull myself together here. Okay, so what else are they using on us? Well, this is a good one. Electric chairs. An electric chair is a device used to execute an individual by electrocution. When used, the condemned person is strapped to a specifically built wooden chair and electrocuted through electrodes fastened on the head and leg. Starting to sound like those ECTs, isn't it? This execution method, conceived in 1881 by a Buffalo, New York dentist, excuse me, by a Buffalo, New York dentist named Alfred P. Southwick, was developed throughout the 1880s as a supposed humane alternative to hanging. It was first used in 1890. I still don't understand why a dentist invented this, but I'll keep moving along here. Um, Dentists are also sadomasochistic. Just think about that one. In your teeth all day. Let me yank that thing out. And then they put metal in our all the mercury in our mouth and stuff. Yeah, dentists are as bad as the rest of them. If you have any issues, try using some natural honey on your issues. Okay, there's a lot of things you can try out there. Okay, but I can't get diverted today. So now that I've talked about these other lovely things, electric chairs and all that, let's take a look at what are some of the most commonly used devices for homicides in the United States. Well, handguns, 45%, firearms, 23%, other weapons, 11%, knives or cutting instruments, 10%, hands, fists, or feet, 4.3%, rifles, only 2.6%, and shotguns, 1.4%. What state is each type of weapon most commonly used in homicides? Using the 2019 crime in the U.S., and keep in mind one other thing here. When you look at any crime data in the United States, well, I hate to break it to you, but it's not accurate. Just in a nutshell, how it works is they compile all these FBI reports and stuff. They compile these reports based on data they get from local police stations and stuff, right? Well, there is no regulation saying they must report these things. So just take it with I don't know, edge of caution because the numbers are clearly rigged, okay? So Using the 2019 crime in the United States data, they also create a state-by-state breakdown on the percentage of murders using each weapon. So let me see here. Maryland. Boy, Maryland's got some problems. That's where Fort Detrick is. What if they have a lot of incidents out there? Maryland was found to have the highest percentage of homicides. Now, I didn't read this part before I started laughing, okay? I'm not happy if people at Fort Detrick are dying. You guys at Fort Detrick, you guys at CIA, good morning, NATO, good morning, Belgium. You guys may want the death of me, but I very sincerely, and I want you to pay attention to my words, I mean this quite sincerely. I do not wish that you would die. But I would like to make you aware that all of the things they're doing to me, well, who do you think's going to be around when this whole thing blows down? Well, I think the only people are going to be the people specifically in their top. But in order to pull this off, they have a lot of people in the lower ranks pulling off all the stuff against the rest of us. So I think in the end, the only ones that are going to gather together are going to be their own people. So it's just kind of interesting, all these homicides already in Maryland, but I digress. So Maryland was found to have the highest percentage of homicides using handguns, 75%. Vermont was found to have the highest percentage of homicides using rifles. Pretty interesting, right? Maybe because of hunting there. Okay, Maine did shotguns. So yeah, this country is pretty well loaded with weapons, so I'd kind of watch out while you're there because they have known forever that our bodies are electrical machines. The creator of the human body conceived of billions of neurons communicating by a storm of electrical pulses. The digital electrical impulses enable human audition, visual, as well as pressure, balance, smell, taste, and awareness. Our body's nervous system discriminates among countless smells, tastes, sounds, visual images, and forces. Various brain regions interpret the meaning of multiple digital codes. We are not only able to perceive many different sounds, but also identify the types of musical instruments producing the sounds, its pitch, timbre, and loudness. The human visual apparatus is capable of sensing color, shape, and brightness. Bioscientists are far more able to offer accurate descriptions than meaningful explanations. Thousands of volumes describe human senses in intricate detail. They know all these things, right? They know that all these things would impact our electrical bodies. And I've done shows about this, and they're going to be down below as far as why power plants are a trick, okay? They're harvesting this electricity from the air and charging us for it. But let me keep reading. Electricity is everywhere, even in the human body. Our cells are specialized to conduct electrical currents. Electricity is required for the nervous system to send signals throughout the body and to the brain, making it possible for us to move, think, and feel. Is the human body an electric battery? Your cells are basically batteries, biochemical ones that convert sugar fuel into energy. Are humans positively charged? The human body can carry both positive and negative charges. Our body contains various ions like sodium ion, potassium ion, chloride ion, which have the tendency to conduct electricity, and this makes our body a good conductor of electricity. Normal human metabolism produces heat as a basal metabolic rate of around 80 watts. During a bicycle race, a cyclist can produce close to 400 watts of mechanical power over an hour, and in short bursts over double that, 1,000 to 1,100 watts. Modern racing bicycles have greater than 95% mechanical efficiency. Humans give off mostly infrared radiation, which is electromagnetic radiation with a frequency lower than visible light. The human body is composed largely of water and dissolved salts, so the human body is an electric conductor. The human body acts as a semiconductor. Its resistance, therefore, varies with voltage. The energy output of the resting adult human body is equal to the power of a 100-watt electrical light bulb. Which part of the human body can produce electricity? Electrical stimuli are generated in the sinus node of the heart in the upper chamber. Depending on your size, age, and fitness level, the heart will produce this electrical stimuli between 60 to 100 times per minute. Is the human body electric or magnetic? The human body can be regarded as an extraordinarily complex electrical machine. The human body produces complex electrical activity in several different types of cells, including neurons, endocrine, and muscle cells, all called excitable cells. As all electricity does, this electricity also creates a magnetic field. Can the human body act as a conductor of electricity? Your cells are able to generate charges that leap from one cell to the other until arriving at their desired location. The body is merely one large machine full of circuitry and electricity. Since practically 70% of the body is made up of water, it is considered to be a good conductor of electricity on average. Is the human body a machine? Like real machines, the human body also consists of many parts that work together to perform certain functions, which in the case of the human body include keeping the organism alive. Human bodies can conduct electricity due to the presence of blood, which is a medium of high ion content. Due to the presence of minerals and ions, blood proves to be a very good conductor of electricity. Wood, plastic, and rubber are poor conductors of electricity. So this makes it even more interesting, right? Because they know that human blood can conduct electricity due to the presence of blood. So yeah, I mean, I can tell you right now, I can feel it through every second of my blood getting these very high doses. Do humans give off thermal energy? Depending on the activity and the environment, the body dissipates between 290 and 3800 of thermal. Your body uses chemical potential energy stored internally to do work. And that produced process also generates thermal energy, which you release as exhausted heat. And this was very interesting to me. It said, what makes a person more conductive? People with higher levels of moisture in their skin and a higher percentage of body fat tend to be more conductive electricity than those of lower levels of moisture and lower body fat. So yeah, it's interesting that heavier people conduct it more. Maybe has worked I'm not heavy, but maybe being thin has worked in my advantage because yeah, and that's probably another reason why they want everybody to be extra heavy, right? Because I've talked about this in the past. I'll just give you a very quick overview. They named the coronavirus, well, according to what I think, they named it coronavirus because it has to do with the magnetic field around our heart. And I will have that show linked down below, but that's why they called it corona. and they have been doing some studies about people who work on electrical lines. In other words, if you work on a utility company, you work on an electricity company, they're starting to do some studies of people that have been working and what their heart rate has been. Excuse me, their heart failures have been. But they don't know a lot. Well, I think they know a lot. They're just not doing studies, right? So good luck accessing what they do know. So there are some studies out there, and I'm going to go ahead and I have them linked down below. So let me take this as I'm about ready to wrap up here. I just need to wrap up as quickly as I can. So let me get back over here and tell you what I have down below. Down below, I have my home address, 309 East Klug Avenue. I have the map where you can see the transformers all on my website. You can also, on my website, you can see how I look. I look horrific. I look much worse than that photo, but I'll just leave that one alone. I also have a link to my show that I did about electricity is harvested for free from the air, not created in power plants. I have another, there was a very interesting study about magnetic field exposure and cardiovascular disease mortality among electrical utility workers. I found that whole study. There's a new study that's talked about the suicides after electroshock. I found that study that I put down below. A study on the electroshock therapy. I also published a show that I did when I realized that I was being murdered in my own home. I recorded a very explosive show. It's a very graphic show. It was titled, I'm Being Murdered in My Own Home. Yes, I was quite angry in that show because anyway, I'm not going to repeat what I've already said, but the day I finally figured out what was going on, the temptation to grab the microphone overrode my sense of sensibility. But hey, I said it. The show remains. There it is for you to take a listen to it. So, okay. I also did a show in the past about our smart meters like Nazi ovens. I did another show called Bioterrorism, USA government smart meters used against citizens. I also did another show, Cheap Electricity or Eugenics, Nuclear Reactors. Those shows are all linked below. I found a link about tasers, a police device for torture or not. I found a whole bunch of similar articles that have to do with electromagnetic fields and health effects. So any work that I'm able to find, I certainly publish it down there for you to take a look at. So let me just go back over this. I can wrap this up. So if all of this stuff is so great, right? Why aren't there any studies? I've shown you everything that I can know. Maybe you can dig up another study or two that I might have missed, but I don't think you're going to find much that I've missed. But if it's so safe, why no studies? Why is nobody suing their hats off of their heads over all of this, right? Just over the fact of the electricity. They invented electricity onto the game board as a eugenics trick. We are from an advanced society. We all understood that electricity was bad. Electricity is a murder weapon. Why are we letting power companies murder us in our own home? You think you won't be next? I got news for you, kids. As sad as it makes me, everybody is going to be fair game. I am luckily, and why do I say lucky? Well, I don't think it's lucky to die of lung cancer. I'm not saying that. But luckily, I caught them in every move. So I have told you exactly how to figure this stuff out. You're already going to be in trouble if you have a smart meter on your property. Do not sleep near that smart meter. Do not close off that room to that smart meter. I almost had a full seizure from closing off that room. Do not close off that room to that smart meter. But you need to be aware, where are the transformers in your area? And if you want to do some looking around, if you know where somebody else lives, look around their neighborhood. Do they have a transformer? Maybe you have one on your house and you don't even know about it because you thought they were just doing this to me. Hello, hello, hello. It's all of us. They put these smart meters on because when they got caught experimenting on us with radiation, Bill Clinton came forward. I'm sorry, America, this will never happen again. We were testing radiation on you people, and it's never going to happen again. So what happened next? Hello, they introduced smart meters once they got caught zapping us with radiation, and I have all the information there for you to look at. Utilities now claim that smart meters deliver benefits to consumers, like access to more data, better services, and cost and energy savings to data analysis. And yet, reports from around the world repeatedly suggest that smart meters aren't delivering on these promises. They are failing to make an impact on energy use. One example I found in the Netherlands, consumers are barely saving 1% on their energy bill, far under the projected amount. You will also, they always come up with these plans like, well, we're going to put smart meters in everybody's home, but we're really doing it because we love all of you. We love you, love you, love you, people. We love you so much that we're going to give you these smart meters because we want you to save money. And we want you to save money because we just love you so much. Well, that's always the plan, right? But it's never the reality. Failure to deliver benefits is one thing, but smart meter radiation often comes with significant health and safety concerns. Smart meters are responsible for catastrophic effects on the health of individuals and animals. I was having trouble with my smart meter way before they hooked me up to the other thing, because I'm not going to go there now, but yes. Stop calling the rest of us crazy. That's all I'm going to say. I'll keep reading. Unsurprisingly, the government's smart meter guide for households states that, in fact, there is no evidence that the meters pose any health risk. So why is that? Why can they make that statement when they have not done any studies? Why aren't they being called out on this? For example, according to the American Cancer Society, RF radiation, which is exactly what we're talking about here, is a possible carcinogen, and smart meters give off RF radiation. It is possible that smart meters could increase cancer risk. Well, why don't we do some studies to figure this stuff out? Why aren't they studying this? Even the World Health Organization has declared that non-ionizing radiation of the kind emitted, and let me stop you right here, okay? This is where they also lay another trick. We're talking ionizing radiation. So let me read here. They're saying even the World Health Organization, who are you going to call, has declared that non-ionizing radiation of the kind emitted by smart meters is a class 2B carcinogen, the same category as DDT based on cell phone brain tumor studies. So we're talking much worse, because this other study was on non-ionizing. We're talking full ionizing radiation coming into our homes here, kids. So also, an article in the peer-reviewed Journal of Neuroscience concluded that EMF hypersensitivity can occur as a bona fide environmental-induced neurological syndrome. What he received in response, he described as heartbreaking testimonies that poured in from around the world, which included stories about catastrophic effects on the health and lives of adults, children, the elderly, pets, farm animals, birds, wild animals, insects, worms, plants, neighbors, workers, and entire communities. The U.S. rolled out its first smart meters in 2009 when Congress introduced the Smart Grid Investment Grant as part of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. According to their website, the program aimed to accelerate the modernization of the nation's electric transmission and distribution systems. In 2015, smart meters got a big push from Obama administration, which funded the rollout of about 18 million smart meters. In 2021, U.S. electric utility companies installed more than 111 million smart meters. Roughly 88% of the meters were installed in personal residences. And I got to ask you another basic question. I was never told of any side effects when they installed that smart meter on my personal residence. Were you? Promoters of the technology argue the meters promote energy conservation because they measure and record electrical usage frequency and provide the data to the utility company and consumer at least once a day. However, critics say the technology can be harmful to health, especially for those who experience electromagnetic sensitivity, and especially for children. They also cite privacy and personal liberty concerns about how utility companies use the data collected by smart meters and who they share the data with. People unwittingly sleep on the other side of the wall and get very, very ill. Smart meters are a bad idea because they use two-way radio frequency microwave radiation to send your usage data to electric, gas, water, solar, and propane energy. They had a conference in 2021, EMF Medical Conference, where healthcare practitioners earned continuing education units on EMF stuff. Let me see what that say. They went on to say these meters are installed directly on our homes and elsewhere with no informed consent, and people unwittingly sleep or spend time on the other side of the wall and get very, very ill. And you need to hear me very carefully. Don't panic and think you're going to close off that space. That is not the correct thing to do. It is not what you want to do, okay? Listen to my shows. Figure it out. It's not what you want to do. It almost killed me. So do not panic and think, oh, I'm just going to close off this room. I'll do it. No. Do not panic. You need to get informed first, okay? And then you need to make decisions. And if you start looking for yourself, you're going to find people that'll have some websites around saying, oh yeah, EMF, it's really bad. Let me tell you how bad. And you'll go on to their website and yeah, they'll give you some data. I just explained to you about how bad it is. And then they're going to try to sell you something. Their whole goal is not to inform you, but to sell you something. Hey, you can buy whatever you want, but I'm here to tell you what they're selling isn't going to fix what's going on, okay? So, in 2018, the U.S. National Toxicology Program, part of the National Institutes of Health, determined from a $30 million study that there was clear evidence that electromagnetic radiation is associated with cancer and DNA damage. So I'm making it easy for people that want to go after these people because all you have to do is look at these dates I'm talking about, right? Because they knew in 2018, they did a $30 million study and found there was clear evidence that electromagnetic radiation, or EMR, is associated with cancer and DNA damage. Since then, more studies have linked EMR, including the RF radiation portion of the EMR spectrum, to many adverse health effects, including tinnitus, fatigue, headaches, dizziness, and disorientation, and nausea and vomiting. So they reviewed more than, well, anyway, so I need to close this off. What I'm trying to tell you is so who are you going to call? They say it's a possible carcinogen. They know that children are at high risk. So why don't they know more? Why didn't they know more before these all got installed on our houses? Well, I would have to say this. Because they're all bad. This is a part about eugenics. So either we right now stand tall to this issue or let's just fucking stop talking about it. Does anybody care? Anybody going to stand up for what's going on inside of our own homes where we should be the safest? A California investigation for the utilities company PG&E determined smart meters could pulse up to 192,000 times a day. I believe they're also putting people at huge fire risk. In March 2015, a dump truck hit a PG&E power pole in Stockton, causing about 5,000 meters that have been placed on residents' homes to instantly explode due to over voltage. So they knew in March 2015, a dump truck hit a PG&E power pole in Stockton, California. It caused about 5,000 smart meters that have been placed on residents' homes to instantly explode due to over voltage. So when two collide, we're at different voltages, right? Utility companies typically will increase their rates in the first year by front-loading all the costs of the smart meters. And they will maintain those higher rates in subsequent years, even when the cost of installing smart meters has been covered, effectively putting money into the right pockets. The rates go up the first year, but they never go down in years 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. This attorney said, yet another invasion of individual liberty, autonomy, and privacy. Smart meters capture and disclose an extraordinary amount of information about what people are doing inside of their homes. Smart meters are yet another invasion of individual liberty, autonomy. So this guy who was a former Texas Assistant Attorney General said this, let me see. Devices like smart thermometers, refrigerators, and washing machines, the utility can discern what appliances are being used and even when individual lights are turned on or off. It can develop a fine-grained home profile that it can then sell to data brokers without user consent using a surveillance capitalism model. There are, of course, surveillance state implications. So that all they're doing is they say, oh, we're not using your data. Well, yes, they are, because what they do is they're selling your data to data brokers. And the data brokers are the ones then the people like the FBI and the CIA go to for that data. See how it all works? This is not a complicated plan, not a complicated plan. And all they do by putting it in these data brokers, it removes one layer of responsibility on their part. Bingo! Hey, they win, right? Smart meters can also restrict persons' ability to use electricity as they wish by allowing the utility to remotely turn off heating and cooling without user consent, even if the user has medical needs requiring heating or cooling to maintaining a prescribed temperature inside the home. Additionally, the data collected via a smart meter is relayed to a transfer station, which sends it to a third-party analysis who may sell the data to high-tech companies. Silicon Valley rides again to ruin our lives now, doesn't it? So they take this data that the utility company is gathering on all of us, right? They sell it to brokers, and then they get to sell it to big tech companies. Gee, I guess it's only me that realized that when the mob stopped being so popular in this country, I don't know about the last John Gotti trial, we stopped hearing much about the mafia in this country, right? Why was that? Because Silicon Valley came into full play. Be safe out there and goodbye for now. You do what you want to do. Anybody going to rise to the cause? Hey, I feel like I'm standing out here alone. Any solidarity showing towards me? I'm doing my best to tell you what's going on. I wish you all the best. Please be safe. Be safe out there. Oh, I will put a link down below. The only way that I have survived is by using what's called distillate. Because what happens is you will start to, what happens is people that are sicker to begin with will start to feel the impacts much earlier. But the first impacts you're going to feel are that nausea, because I can tell the difference. I've been doing a little test study in my own home here. I can tell the difference between the room where I'm in with the air conditioner on and the outdoor fan to the room outside. I don't tell it any kind of genius way. I just do it by, well, who's throwing up, right? Because I have one cat in here with me and another cat out there. Well, the cat out there has more trouble with nausea because there's more radiation in that part of the house. Because in the room that I'm in, with the fresh air and the air conditioning and everything I have in my room, that's really what's kept us alive. But what's also helped is my learning to use this distillate process. Distillate is highly effective. It's a very highly concentrated form of marijuana, and you can really get like $50 worth of distillate will get you about 3 or 4 ounces of weed that you don't have to do a single thing with, but combine it with some honey or something of your choice. Very easy to do. A little crock pot, some honey, some distillate, mix it up. Just be very careful. It's very strong. But the only reason, and I say this in all sincerity, I need you to really hear this. The only reason we have been functioning as long as we have is because if you remember when I did that show about marijuana as medicine around 2019, I got this idea that I followed up on. For some reason, I thought, well, if I pull myself out of the medical system, I may need some help down the road here. And that's when I set forth to learn how to use marijuana as medicine. Nothing will knock out the nausea like some weed will. They know that from the cancer patients they're working on. So it is only a suggestion. You $50 if you're just 1 or 2 people in the household, you would use so little of it. It is so concentrated. That's where you need to be very careful when you're testing things. But it is so concentrated that you would use so little that you could probably get by with that amount over a 2-month period. That's how concentrated it is. So just be careful what you're doing. I've tried to explain it more on my website. I got to close this off. Be safe out there and goodbye for now. And I will be back when I possibly can.